The one thing in my life that I truly regret, because I feel like I sacrificed my kids. What's up, Jewel Gang? Y'all just came back from working out. I just left the gym and decided to sit here and talk to you guys for a minute. I know my last vlog I said I wanted to kind of do Vlogmas with a twist and talk about how I fought my way through trauma. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how to approach it. I don't know how to present it. I'm at a loss. Because my thought process is, I know there are family members that follow my channel, and what I didn't want to do is offend or hurt anyone. But then I had to think about it. My truth is my truth. And if someone gave me the experience, which gave me my truth, I have a right to talk about my experience and my truth. With that being said, so what I'm going to talk about is regret today. And the one thing in my life, and I've said this on previous vlogs, and I've said this to my children and the family members, the one thing in my life that I truly regret is returning to Virginia to help anyone. Because I feel like I sacrificed my kids in the process of helping other people. And my kids have told me on several different occasions how they were treated or mistreated while they weren't under my watch. Which I found baffling, because the things that they told me about separately and together kind of aligned. And it bothered me that those things didn't happen in my presence. So the one thing that I always regret is sacrificing my kids in the attempt to be valued by my family. You have to be careful. You have to be careful. You have to find value in you before anybody else do. And it's never worth sacrificing yourself or your children. There are times that I would allow people to live with me without question. Say you was homeless, if I had a floor and a pillow, you had a place to stay. But there are times that I slept in my car, or were in very difficult situations, or in shelters, because the very people that I was willing to house told me no. Told me no. And I kept exposing my children, placing us in very vulnerable, compromising situations, trying to prove to my family I was worth loving. And if I would have reached the place that I am now, where their acceptance of me doesn't matter, because what matters is that I accept me, that I love me, that I appreciate me, that my self-esteem, my self-worth, and my self-value comes from me. And it's not based on how my family accepts me. I've always felt that I didn't quite fit in. Well, I didn't fit in. I always felt I didn't fit in. But I always felt that my value to the family was the benefit that I served them. And that's a tough place to be, and I'm okay with that, because I know that I'm not going to fit everywhere and with everybody, and that's okay. You can't expect people to value you if they don't value themselves. they are not going to know how to value you. I sacrificed my children. So a lot of healing my children had to do was from the time that I left them in Virginia. And because of the dysfunction, the toxicity, and the emotional, mental, and physical abuse we endured when we were children, my family don't think they abused my children. They don't think that they abused them at all. But they did, in more ways than one. And I'm talking about physically, mentally, and emotionally. I know one of my kids confronted my brother about it, and my brother talked to me about it and was like, yeah, they think we abused them or I abused them. And what he said is, they didn't end up in the hospital. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I said, your father was abusive. I didn't end up in the hospital, so you saying that he didn't abuse me? Because he did. Abuse doesn't always mean that you end up in a hospital. There are different forms of abuse. There's mental abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse. I mean, there's different forms of abuse that would never lead you to a hospital. And I was in awe that he thought, because my children didn't end up in the hospital with broken legs and bruises and arms, that his thought process was they weren't abused, but they were. This is the biggest problem I have. I'm finding out a lot of things since we've been in California. So this is fresh to me because I'm just finding this out. I have 3 brothers. One of them, my youngest brother, is only 4 years older than my oldest son. And then I have my middle brother and my brother under me. We are all 5 years apart. So I'm 5 years older than my next sibling, and he's 5 years older than the next, and so on and so on. And to find out that my brothers were, I want to say spanking, but my kids say beating my kids. I have a problem with that, and I'm going to tell you why. I never spanked my nieces or nephews. Not one of my nieces and nephews can go to their parents, their mother or father, and say, my auntie spanked me. Never happened. And it never would. The other problem I have is my brothers were spanking my children, but they didn't spank each other's children. And that in itself, as a mother, is heart-wrenching. Like, I never spanked my nieces and nephews and my brothers, except for my youngest, is spanking my kids. Now I know they feel like they was being uncles, but it didn't never have to come to a physical sense. They could have talked to my kids. But again, what I explained to my kids is because the way we grew up, they thought that was okay. And meanwhile, they wasn't spanking each other kids. So if y'all not spanking each other kids, why are you spanking my kids? And that's what trauma, growing up in trauma, does. The functionality of the family is broken down, is fractured. Actually, there is no functionality. It's very toxic. When I came back from Richmond, I pretty much was like, okay, so I'm flying back and forth to have my brother to take some weight off his shoulders. But then I was thinking, I've been in California almost 9 years. No one has been to see me. No one has said, I'm coming to see you, sis. I've been over there 5 times. Twice this year. My saying is, I'm built to survive a struggle, but I'm made for success. But that doesn't mean on that journey, I don't need reassurance. I don't need my family to reach out to me and say, hey, are you all right? My family isn't built like that. They're not constructed like that. And I'm okay with that. Because I believe that's why God brought us way over here. I don't have any family in California. Me and my kids are it. This is it. And I believe God, when I prayed and said, God, please allow my family to function differently, separate us from this generational curse. I don't want to be a toxic family. I want us to function as a unit, as a family, a loving, caring, nurturing family. He said, okay. But in doing so, I'm going to have to separate you. I'm way in California. I've been here almost 9 years. And I don't regret this walk. When we came over here, I was homeless. We drove over here, we were homeless. We were sleeping in a car. I've talked about that. I walked up for a job making a lot of money because of how I was being mistreated. Because I was thinking, I'm not going to let this lady mistreat me. I was raised with people mistreating me. Now at this point, I'm in control. I'm not giving nobody permission to mistreat me. And that takes me into this. Fighting your way through trauma is hard. I'm just going to say this. It's hard. There are going to be some things about yourself you don't like. There are going to have to be old habits you have to break. You're going to have to fight for your self-esteem, your self-worth, your self-value, and most of all, your inner peace. Most of all, your inner peace. And in fighting for those things, that may mean eliminating people in your life that don't deserve access to you. And limiting access to others that truly don't appreciate you. And that's hard. I have a cousin right now I don't speak to anymore. That was my sister. It was my sister. And it was just one too many things that was done that I said, hey, this relationship is one-sided. If you find yourself in a situation with family members or friends and you're always giving, you may need to stop and take stock. I had to stop and think about what my value was to those who had access to me. Now I started cutting people off, eliminating people. Stop conversating about your troubles. Because some people listen so they can weaponize your journey against you. They'll listen with an open ear, but not an open heart. Because those very people that listen to you and say, oh, that's so sad, that's so, oh, that's awful, will take your story as soon as you do something that they don't like and weaponize it against you and attack you with it. That's why you didn't do such and such, and that's why you can't. And that's why this happened to you. And you're like dumbfounded, like, wait a minute, what happened? Be careful who you share your journey with, especially if you're in the throes of trauma trying to figure it out. Your journey, your story, is not for everyone. And sometimes when you're fighting your way through that trauma, it's mandatory that you walk alone and move in silence. I thank God that my children are who they are in spite of me. Because I messed up. I messed up. I remember when they was little, right before we went back to Richmond, I claimed my children in the name of God. I said, God, I'm going to mess up. Help me. I'm going to mess up. And I don't want to mess up your gift. Because these are my gifts. You gave me. I was able to make people. I made people that are adults now having other people. I made people. And I'm still amazed when I look at these people standing above my head. I'm like, dang, I made you. I did this. God gave me you as a gift. Because if he didn't, God knows where I would be. I wouldn't have fought through no trauma. I wouldn't have wanted, it would have been what it is. But because I didn't want to pass the trauma on to my kids, and because I wanted my children to have self-esteem and self-worth and self-value, I fought and fought hard. It was late because I was still engulfed with people who are comfortable maneuvering and navigating in dysfunction. So it was hard. My healing didn't gain momentum until I was fully separated, to be honest. So my healing journey included my children. And when they talk about the things that happened to them in Richmond, it angers me, it frustrates me, and it fills me with regret. That because I wanted my family to know that I loved them, I wanted my family to know that I was worth loving, I sacrificed my kids. Listen, don't expect people to value you when they don't value themselves. And that's the truth. And what I'm going to say is, your healing is your responsibility. You may not be able to go to someone who hurt you and ask them to help heal you, because it just doesn't work that way. And it's okay to go seek help if you need it. It's okay. But what you need to know is, regardless what that person said about you or to you, you were here on purpose. And that's why I used to close my vlogs with, you are here on purpose and with a purpose. Because that's the one thing I kept saying to myself. I'm here on purpose. I wasn't an accident. I'm here on purpose. I wasn't an accident. My children are here on purpose. I used to joke and say, oh yeah, oops babies. But the best things that could have happened to me in my life is my children. And now they're having children, and I'm watching them have children, and I'm watching them with their children. Well, my daughter doesn't have any children, but in time she will. And she's going to do it differently. And I'm so proud of that young lady. I'm proud of all my children, because they are who they are in spite of who I was. All right, y'all, I'll talk to y'all later. Till next time, we're keeping up with Daz. You are here on purpose, and most definitely with a purpose. Bye, guys.